On June 12, 2026, just one day after the World Cup kicked off, two completely different stories unfolded at the exact same time. One happened in Austria, the other happened in Miami. Together, they exposed a question that has been hanging over world football for years. When football talks about inclusion, respect, and unity, does it truly mean it? In Salzburg, European football's governing body made a historic announcement. Omar Artan, the Somali referee who had just been denied entry into the United States before the World Cup, was appointed to officiate the UEFA Super Cup between Paris Saint-Germain and Aston Villa. It was a groundbreaking decision. Artan would become the first African referee in history to take charge of a major UEFA final. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Miami, FIFA President Gianni Infantino was asked about the very same referee. He was asked what FIFA had done after one of its own selected World Cup officials was stopped, questioned, and ultimately sent home before the tournament even began. His response? Chill and relax. 3 words. 3 words that instantly became bigger than the story itself. Because while one organization was finding a way to restore a man's dream, another seemed determined to move on from it. And that's why this isn't just a story about a referee. It's a story about power. It's a story about responsibility. And it's a story about what football's institutions actually do when their values are put to the test. To understand why this moment has resonated across the football world, we have to go back to the beginning. Omar Artan is not an unknown official. He is not an inexperienced referee suddenly thrust into the spotlight. At just 34 years old, he had already built one of the most impressive officiating careers in African football. Born in Somalia, Artan joined FIFA's international refereeing list in 2018. Over the following years, he steadily climbed the ranks, earning respect across the continent for his performances in major CAF competitions. His reputation reached another level when he officiated the second leg of the CAF Champions League final and was later named CAF Men's Referee of the Year for 2025. Those achievements earned him something even bigger: a place at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Out of officials from every corner of the globe, FIFA selected him as one of only 52 referees trusted to work at football's biggest tournament. For any referee, it is the ultimate destination. Years of sacrifice, years of pressure, years of scrutiny, all leading to one moment. Then everything changed. On June 6th, Artan landed in Miami carrying a diplomatic passport, valid travel documents, FIFA accreditation, and the visa required to enter the country. By every official measure, he had arrived exactly as he was supposed to, but he never made it through. According to Artan's own account, U.S. border officials detained him for questioning that lasted nearly 11 hours. 11 hours. Not 11 minutes. Not a routine check. 11 hours. Artan later said much of the questioning focused on Al-Shabaab, the militant group operating in parts of Somalia, not his football career, not his FIFA credentials, not his World Cup assignment. A terrorist organization. Eventually, he was placed in a holding facility before being put on a flight back to Istanbul. His World Cup was over before it ever began. The official explanation cited security vetting concerns. No further details were provided. And just like that, one of the most important moments of his life disappeared. FIFA confirmed that Artan would no longer officiate at the tournament. The organization stated that immigration decisions were the responsibility of the host nation and that FIFA had no authority to intervene. Legally, that may have been true, but for many observers, that wasn't the point. Because FIFA had selected him. FIFA had promoted the World Cup as the most inclusive tournament in football history. FIFA had celebrated the global nature of the competition. Yet when one of its own officials was denied entry, the organization seemed unable, or unwilling, to do anything meaningful on his behalf. Then came the moment that transformed frustration into outrage. When Infantino was asked about Artan's situation, he told reporters to chill and relax. And suddenly the conversation wasn't only about what happened at the airport. It was about leadership. It was about empathy. And it was about whether football's most powerful institution truly understood the significance of what had just occurred. Because while those words were making headlines around the world, something very different was happening elsewhere. European football was already preparing a response, and not a symbolic one, a real one. Within hours, UEFA announced that Omar Artan would officiate the UEFA Super Cup between Paris Saint-Germain and Aston Villa on August 12 in Salzburg. The significance of that appointment cannot be overstated. This is not a friendly match. This is not a charity game. This is one of the most prestigious fixtures in European football. The Champions League winners against the Europa League winners. A global audience. A major final. And for the first time in history, an African referee would stand at the center of it all. UEFA President Alexander Ceferin accompanied the announcement with a statement that felt carefully crafted to send a message. He praised Artan's quality and experience. He described football as something that exists to connect people. And most importantly, he said UEFA wanted to show its respect for Artan and the officiating skills that had earned him such a prestigious nomination. That line mattered, because everyone knew exactly which nomination he meant. The World Cup. The opportunity Artan had lost. UEFA wasn't simply assigning him a match. It was publicly validating him, publicly supporting him, and publicly declaring that his exclusion from the World Cup changed nothing about his quality as an official. The message was impossible to miss. If one door had been closed, European football was opening another. The reaction from Africa was equally powerful. CAF President Patrice Motsepe praised Artan for making Somalia and the entire African continent proud. He highlighted the referee's accomplishments and emphasized the international respect he had earned through years of excellence. Then he personally thanked Alexander Ceferin for making the Super Cup appointment possible. That public exchange between the leaders of African and European football spoke volumes. Because this was no longer just about a referee. It had become a statement of solidarity. And perhaps that's why the story struck such a nerve. When Artan returned home to Mogadishu, thousands gathered to welcome him back. Think about that for a moment. Not a striker, not a captain, not a World Cup star, a referee. Thousands of people filled a stadium for a referee. Why? Because they understood what had been taken away from him, and because they wanted him to know that one decision at an airport did not define his career. The contrast between the reactions could not have been sharper. One institution distanced itself from the situation. Another stepped forward. One side told people to relax. The other created history. And that contrast has become one of the defining stories of the 2026 World Cup. Because the Omar Artan episode doesn't exist in isolation. It arrived during a tournament already surrounded by controversy. Questions about visa approvals, questions about travel restrictions, questions about supporter access, questions about ticketing policies, questions about whether the World Cup's promise of universal inclusion matched the reality experienced by many people trying to attend it. For critics, Artan's story became the clearest example yet of a growing disconnect between football's messaging and football's reality. A disconnect between what organizations say and what they actually do when difficult situations arise. That's why UEFA's response carried so much weight. It wasn't just words, it wasn't another statement. It was an action, a decision, a historic appointment. And sometimes actions speak louder than every press release ever written. Today, Omar Artan's World Cup dream remains unfinished. He has said he believes it was fate and that he will work toward the next tournament. And perhaps he will get there. Perhaps 4 years from now, he will finally stand on football's biggest stage. But before that happens, another moment awaits him. On August 12th in Salzburg, he will walk onto the pitch for the UEFA Super Cup. The first African referee ever entrusted with a major UEFA final. A moment nobody expected. A journey nobody planned. A path that led through 11 hours of questioning, a flight home, thousands welcoming him back in Mogadishu, and a phone call that changed everything. Football often tells stories that nobody could write. This is one of them. And whether you see UEFA's decision as solidarity, symbolism, or genuine conviction, One thing is undeniable. When Omar Artan lost the stage he had spent years earning, someone else decided he deserved another one. The question now is simple. Which response better reflects what football claims to stand for? Let me know what you think in the comments. Because this story isn't really about one referee. It's about what happens when the values football celebrates are finally tested in the real world.